Mic the dear participants, participant, is my voice audible? Sir, got it போட்டுங்களா? Sir, Karthik sir, Karthik Kumar sir, is my voice audible? Good afternoon, sir. Your voice is not audible, sir. Sir, your voice is not audible. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, voice is not audible, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, voice is not audible, sir. Sir, is my voice audible? Good afternoon, sir. Is my voice audible? Good afternoon, sir. சார் உங்களுக்கு கேக்குதா நான் பேசுறேன்? ஆனா அவரு பேசுறது கேட்க மாட்டேங்குது சார். அவரு பேசுறது கேட்க மாட்டேங்குது சார். உங்களுக்கு இருக்காரு சார். நீங்க பேசுங்க சார். உங்க வாய்ஸ் கேட்க மாட்டேங்குது சார். சார், உங்க வாய்ஸ் கேட்கல. கார்த்திக் குமார். அதான் அதான் சார். சார், யுவர் என்ன சார் கேக்குதுங்களா சார்? குட் ஆஃப்டர்நூன் சார். யுவர் வாய்ஸ் இஸ் நாட் audible. I can't hear your voice. சார் பேசுங்க சார். Say something, sir. Sir, your voice is not audible. அவர் எனக்கு கேட்க மாட்டேன். சார் நான் பேசுறது கேக்குதுங்களா? இல்ல சார் பண்ணலாம். சரி, இப்ப நான் வெல்கம் ஸ்பீச் கொடுத்துருக்கா? சார் அன்மியூட் பண்ணுங்க. Sir, please unmute your mic. Unmute your mic, sir. Sir, please unmute. Post பண்ணுங்க. Participants. More. இப்ப நான் பண்ணணுமா? வர மாட்டேங்குது. இருக்கு.
Yeah, now thing I am able to hear. So can you hear me now? So Dr. Rama, am I audible now? So, shall I start or should I wait for something? I think I need not wait for any formal introduction or welcome. I think I can straight away start with my talk. Is it okay? Okay. Since I don't get any response, I think I can start away. So, dear friends and the organizers of the 1 week FGP, uh, pleasure to meet you all virtually. There are some inconveniences while we interact via virtual platform. Hope you understand it well, and we will try to overcome these practical inconveniences so that we can make the interaction fruitful. And before I start my talk, I have been given a topic by the organizers, contemporary literary research and ambulation of academic publishing. For my convenience, I take off of the title, contemporary literary research. That part alone I take. And I would like to share some of my views and ideas regarding contemporary literary research. Um, uh, they're all from our practical experience that we gain as faculty in universities or colleges. Before I start, let me make a few notes of apology. First thing, I have joined using my mobile phone since I'm away from my workplace. I could not use any other option than using my mobile phone. Hope I can reach out to you. Please bear with me for that. And the second thing, I have roughly prepared the material, so it is not complete. So I could not share mm, a kind of material with you all. So if I had shared some material, I think the interaction would have been more lively and interesting. So I'm extremely apologetic for that, and I'm sure that I will share the material via the organizer before the last day of the FTP, that is day after tomorrow. So with this, I think I can get into the topic, contemporary literary research. I think I can divide the talk into three parts, or we can even find three phases in doing research. So in the first part, I will within a very few minutes, I would like to say something about the nature of research that is being undertaken nowadays, the nature of contemporary research, especially in the field of literature. And in the second part, I could uh, give some clues or some methods by which we can arouse interest in students, and we can create awareness about the real kind of research that they ought to do. And in the third part, I would like to throw light on the importance of documentation. Okay, that is the final part. So this is roughly the plan of my talk. So as you all know very well, research uh, or the number of research has gone up, no doubt about it. The number of academic research, we find more and more people submitting thesis for PhD and more people being awarded with PhD, especially in English. So the number of research scholars is increasing. The number of publications is also increasing because it has been made mandatory. So quantitatively, it is increasing. It is on the increase steadily. But there is a widespread apprehension that the standard of research or the quality of research is steadily going down. Uh, I need not elaborate it further because we all witness it. So I personally feel that it is not because of the lack of ability that the standard of research is going down. I cannot simply blame the students or the or the research supervisors for that. There is a lack of awareness of the methodology of research. So if we try to inculcate in our students an aptitude for research, I think that we can try to bring research to its formal or pristine glory. So what I would like to say is we have started considering research as a program. Uh, I think research cannot be considered a program. It's a process. It's a never-ending process. It's a lifelong process, and there can be no end to research. But for various reasons, it has come to be considered a program like any other degree program, BA, MA, or MPhil. Program by program, I mean a prescribed period of time, a prescribed syllabus, a prescribed format. So these uh, cannot make research an enlivening process. It confines research. It cripples the researcher. So research should be understood as a process rather than as a program. This is the first point I would like to highlight. So research is a process, and it should start even before the researcher registers for his or her PhD program. Usually, the researcher starts his or her research once the researcher enrolls himself or herself for PhD in a college or a university. So that's where the researcher believes that the research begins, but it cannot be so. Research cannot be so. Research is a lifelong process. It should start even earlier. So we can identify, for my convenience, I divide the process of research into three major phases. And I have given three names to each of these phases. The first phase I would like to call reception. And the second one, I would like to name it as analysis. And the third one could be called execution. So these are the three phases or levels in the process of research, any research for that matter, especially literary research. But our students, the contemporary researchers, they start from the third stage. They think that research begins with execution. By research, they mean documentation. By research, they mean collecting the material. By research, they mean bringing out the thesis, okay, as a volume. But the earlier two stages are completely ignored. So without knowing what they are doing, that's how the standard of research or the quality of research has gone down, I believe. So, reception, analysis, and execution. Reception, uh, by reception, I mean reading, listening to lectures, to peers, okay, exposing oneself to the various developments in the field of literature and other fields. So a person with research aptitude cannot keep quiet, cannot be idle. Uh, Continuous reading, okay, familiarizing oneself with a number of authors, a number of genres, a number of movements, literary movements. These are all necessary. So at that stage, the researcher or the student may not uh, know that he is going to end up his journey or he is going to pursue a research program. So it is not for that purpose he is studying or reading a number of material, but only from reception we can gather material that ignites the interest for research, that ignites the interest for inquiry. So inquiry is the basic questioning, or inquiry is the basic spirit that the researcher should be endowed with. And that should begin even as a student. That should begin when the student is still in his UG or PG program. So what I want to say is research begins well ahead. Research begins even before he formally registers himself for a PhD program. So reception should naturally lead the student to analysis. So when he keeps on learning, when he keeps on listening to lectures, when he keeps on studying, when he sustains his interest in a particular field, he cannot stop there. He has to analyze. Naturally, it leads him to the next level, that is analysis, where uh, he or she compares what he reads from different sources, or he contrasts, he uh, is reminded of something which he has read elsewhere. So cross references are possible. So he is in a position to analyze what he has read. So in the first stage, he was simply receiving. He was a passive reader. He simply kept reading what all that came his way. But during the second stage, he becomes a little more critical. He is not a passive receiver any longer. He receives with a sense of caution. He receives with a sense of examination or with a sense of inquiry. He verifies whatever he receives. He simply does not receive blindly. He puts the material into scrutiny or examination before he agrees with what he reads. So this is the second stage, that is analysis. So reception should naturally lead to analysis. So these two stages, our students completely lack. Okay, they read a very minimum. Okay, our syllabus has become very slim. Even in boards of studies, we insist that the syllabus should be as minimum as possible. The number of works prescribed should be as minimum as possible. We think that we are helping our students by reducing the volume of syllabus. We think that we are helping our students. As a result, so what happens? They are deprived of their chance to read a lot. Okay, you can compare the syllabus of for the contemporary times with the syllabus of the yesteryears to understand how it has become very slim and thin. So, though we think that we are helping our students in a way, we are depriving our students of their opportunity to learn a lot, to be familiar with a number of authors, number of works of art, number of movements, and even the pattern of question paper, the the way in which examinations are conducted. So my intention is not to blame anything, but I would like to assess the contemporary situation from a neutral point of view. So all these have made a terrible impact on the reading ability of our students. So as a result, when a student passes out the UG or the PG program, he possesses a very little knowledge about literature and the authors. And naturally, step is to register for PhD. Without without thorough preparation, without being properly equipped for research, he or she is pushed into the research program. So this is the point I would like to highlight. So in the first phase, we terribly failed. I mean the entire system. Okay, the entire system um, is seemingly it is in favor of the students, but it is not so. Okay, it has made a terrible impact on the ability of the students. So students lack reception. They read very little. Even what they read it only for the examination point of view. So they memorize a few essays, and their intention is to clear the examinations. So, but that will not help a student to become a researcher. A researcher must have wide reading. Uh, he must have familiarity with many fields. Okay, so only then he can narrow down his interest. He is exposed to just one or two fields from which he is able to make a choice. That cannot be research. Okay, there is no research involved in it. So in the first phase, the system is the contemporary system is not conducive enough to make our students well read. Okay, that's the first point. Only if they read a lot, only if they are familiar with a number of works and authors, they can lead or they can find themselves in the second phase, that is analysis. They lack analysis. They are not able to, okay, make references. They are not able to make comparisons. They don't find, okay, a reader who is well read, naturally, when he goes through a work of art, he finds a kind of similarity or dissimilarity with what he has already read. So this is completely lacking in our students. They lack analysis, the analytical bent of mind, which is very, very necessary for a researcher. He must be able to compare and contrast. He must be able to find out similarities between authors or between works of art which he has read okay elsewhere. So all these qualities are required of a researcher, but the contemporary scenario does not permit the student to become analytical. So without reception, without the analytical bent of mind, the student just like that he enters the field of research. So he considers research yet another program. Okay, if he stays for a few years and if he completes the coursework and if he submits the thesis, he believes that uh, he can be awarded the degree. But it is not so. Though it is the current affairs, it is not so. So I am reminded of what Bacon has said: "A reading maketh a full man, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man." I think I can find a parallel between what Bacon says and what I was trying to say about research. The three phases in the process of research: reception, analysis, and execution. Okay, reading can be equated to reception. First, he has to receive a lot of information from various sources that come his way. Only then he can okay move to the next phase, that is analysis. Conference. Okay, conference makes a ready man. And only after going through the first two phases, reception and analysis, the final phase, that is execution, is possible. But nowadays, our students or our researchers directly land in the third stage of research, that is execution. The moment they register themselves for PhD, they are searching for a topic. Somehow they phrase the topic, and once they finalize the topic, they go for collection of material, and they compile material, and they bring it out in the form of a thesis, and they submit it. So this is how research has been understood, but it has to be understood in the proper sense. So I don't know how we can mm, okay help that, but as far as possible, we can help our students read a lot. Okay, uh, we need not um, urge them to finalize the topic. We need not urge them to confine to a particular area of research or a particular author. Let us give them a free chance. Let us give them an opportunity where they can familiarize with a number of authors, a number of works of art, a number of literary movements before they are able to finalize their uh, research topic and research author. So somehow we should make some provision for the lapses in the system. So this is the first point I would like to make. So there is an inbuilt lapse in the system, and as researchers, as ethical research supervisors, we should do something for that. And we cannot do complete justice for that, but as much as possible, we can help the students develop interest in reading. Let us introduce them. Uh, Let us introduce a number of magazines or research articles to them. So let us not urge them to complete the work within the stipulated period of time. So this is the first thing. So having dealt with reception and analysis, which the students should naturally possess, and to some extent it can be precipitated or encouraged by the research supervisor or the teacher, we can guide, or we can channelize the researcher in the third part, that is in the execution. So let us assume that the researcher is already equipped with the sufficient information. Okay, he is equipped with reading skill. He is equipped with analytical skill. So now he has come to undertake research. So now the work of the research supervisor becomes very crucial. So this is the third stage, execution. That is putting the ideas into words, into converting the ideas into a document. So it is at this stage the researcher requires more guidance from the research supervisor. Uh, Documentation or execution is as important as the earlier two phases. Preparing oneself for research and the ability to analyze is as important as the execution part. So I think we can do something concrete at this phase. So I think I can throw some more light on how research can be executed. So we have to assume that the researcher is properly equipped with ability to read and analyze. So now he is going to put his ideas into words. So at this stage, what can the research supervisor do? So that is my concern here. Hope you are with me. Uh, can I proceed? So do I make things clear? Okay, let me assume that I'm received. Okay. So when it comes to the third phase, execution, again, I would like to identify at least some 6 or 7 phases in the in the last phase of execution. So what can a research supervisor do? What can the research guide do to better the researcher, to better the quality of the research that the researcher is undertaking? So I have identified some steps which will help the research supervisor when he or she is guiding the researcher. The first step, I call it pre-writing. The second one, identifying the thesis. The third one, supporting the thesis with evidence. The fourth one, organizing the evidence. The fifth one, writing the first draft. Revising is the sixth part, and the last one is editing and proofreading. So we can, okay, find these seven phases, okay, seven steps involved in the process of executing research, that is converting ideas into a thesis. So what do we mean by pre-writing? So already I have shared with you my concern about the contemporary researchers' ability or lack of ability to read. So we can do something. We can give them a number of exercise. Okay, even before they choose their topic for research, even before they start their research formally, we can train our students or our researchers in pre-writing. So by pre-writing, I mean writing on any topic of their interest. It should that they should gain some experience. They should gain kind of training in writing. So they wrote their examinations, but it was not a kind of training, okay, for research. So research requires a special training for writing. Before they start their research writing, let us ask our students or our researchers to write on anything. So the purpose is to make them write, to bring their ideas into words. So translating one's ideas into words is very difficult. Into writing is very difficult. It looks easy, but when it comes to actual writing, they find a number of problems. So to identify the problems they have, to encourage them in the art of writing, to help them build confidence, to overcome the fear of converting ideas into words, they need a kind of exercise. Okay, so let us informally, I would like to underline it. It should be informal. It should not be formal. Research is going to be formal. Research writing is going to be formal, or article publishing is going to be formal. But before that, okay, at the early stage, the research supervisor can give a number of topics, or the researcher may be allowed to choose any topic of his or her interest on which he has to write something. So this pre-writing, sometimes pre-writing is otherwise called free writing, because there is no limit, there is no confinement on the part of the researcher, there is no word limit, there is no, okay, prescribed or area of research. He can write on anything. Only thing, he must be able to write something. So this exercise, this informal exercise, helps the researcher in a number of ways. There are several advantages. The first thing, the researcher will realize his ability to write. Okay, he might have had an inhibition, a hesitation, whether he can write something or not. But the exercise, this informal exercise, slowly and then consciously builds a kind of confidence in the researcher. He will develop a kind of a confidence. He comes to realize that he can do something. There may be some initial hiccups, but when we follow it steadily, at a point of time, the researcher will be able to overcome the initial hiccups. He will develop a kind of confidence, which will save a lot of time when it comes to formal writing. So the problem is to start. So our researchers do not know where they should start. Okay, they might have some ideas, they might have some points to make, but when it comes to writing, something stops them, something prevents them from putting their ideas into black and white. So we should do something. Okay, we should go beyond the syllabus, and personally, we should be interested in the development of the researcher and his aptitude for research. So the first thing we should concentrate on is to enhance the writing ability of our researchers. So you can devise. This is only a broad thing I am referring to by pre-writing. But as a faculty, as a research supervisor, you can devise a number of methods. Okay, you can give them assignments. You can give them a picture. You can ask them to convert into an essay or a write up. So you can use your improvisation. You can use your cleverness to exercise this particular phase, that is pre-writing. Pre-writing is actually, it should be free writing. Okay, there should be no uh, restraint. There should be no restriction. You should allow the student to write freely. The only thing that we should focus on is that he must be able to write something, no matter he commits a few mistakes, or he doesn't know how to start, or he doesn't know how to develop. It's only to assess their ability, and to improve their ability, we conduct this exercise. So, realizing the purpose of pre-writing, we should very wisely we should use this phase. Okay, even we can spend about 6 months to 1 year in pre-writing. Okay, but I know the system may not allow us. Okay, there might be a hurry, okay, to complete the process within the stipulated period of time, because others may be waiting. But knowing very well the practical difficulties involved in it, I just make a reference to it. So we must try as much as possible. So writing is very, very important, okay, for especially for the researchers. And the second thing is identifying the thesis. So writing can be a continuous process. And in the meanwhile, so we have to assume that the researcher is well read. The researcher has the ability to analyze. So he has a critical bent of mind. Now we have trained them in writing or in pre-writing. So he's also equipped with a skill for writing. So now I think we can begin the actual research. So first thing, as a researcher, as a research supervisor, we must help the researcher identify a thesis. By thesis, I mean the thesis statement. Sometimes we call it a hypothesis. When it is a practical or pragmatic research, we call it a hypothesis. In literary research, we normally call it a thesis statement. So that is the first thing that we have to do. Of course, the researcher must do that, but the research supervisor should help in all possible ways for the researcher to identify the proper thesis. So once the thesis is identified, once the thesis statement is framed, I believe half of the work is done. Okay, many researchers, even after they complete the research, even after they are awarded their degree, they are not able to say what their thesis statement is. Okay, we know the importance of the thesis statement. It is the statement around which the entire thesis revolves. It is called the controlling statement. All the chapters, all the sentences in the thesis should contribute to the justification of the thesis statement. So the real formal journey of the researcher should begin with the thesis statement. But I don't know, I'm not sure that it is so in reality. So that's why I insist on this. So we have to narrow down, right? We have to narrow down to a particular area of research. We have to narrow down one or two authors, and we have to identify the research gap, right? The researcher must be encouraged to conduct a review of literature. He must go through all the previous works or research works carried out in the same field or on the same author. So having read or having conducted a research review, he must be in a position to identify a research gap, and it is that gap that we are going to fill, or it is that gap that the researcher or the thesis is going to fill. So it is with this consciousness that the researcher should conduct the research, and the research supervisor should help the researcher. So the research is not a document of 300 or 200 pages. Okay, something about an author. The research must be new. It must be uh, able to contribute something new. So every researcher can identify a gap, and to fill that gap, the researcher should consciously conduct the research, and the research supervisor can guide the researcher uh, at this stage. So identifying a thesis. I would like to quote um, the MLA handbook. So it defines thesis, the controlling idea within quotes. Thesis, according to the MLA handbook, it is the controlling idea of the thesis of the entire volume of dissertation, the controlling idea. So that should be the first statement that the researcher must arrive at. Only from there, he has to proceed his journey of research. Only after identifying the thesis statement, he has to identify the chapters. Okay, he has to identify the secondary sources. He has to identify a proper method of documentation. So all these can be possible only after identifying the thesis. So if the thesis is identified properly, the rest of the work is not only easy, it is also meaningful. So according to MLA handbook, thesis is a controlling idea, is the controlling idea. It is also defined in other words. The thesis is the hub, the central point around which all other material revolves. So nothing should be found in the thesis which does not contribute to the elaboration of the thesis statement. So anything that does not contribute to the central idea of the research is redundant. So that is simply considered as padding. Okay, so it's extrapolation. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, when it doesn't mean that we should say everything about an author. When we conduct a research on an author, it doesn't mean that we should say everything we know about the author. Okay, it cannot be called research. Research means what we are saying, what we are having something as new. So that is research. So the points which have already been discussed, the points that have already been contributed, need not be used, okay, in order to make the thesis voluminous. That's why they insist on the central controlling idea, which is otherwise called thesis. So normally in India, we call the dissertation a thesis, right? By thesis, we also refer to the volume that we are submitting. Thesis also refers to the embryo, the central point, the spark, the flash from which the researcher gets idea for the entire research. Okay, the entire 200-page dissertation revolves or originates from a flash, originates from a spark. That spark has to be framed, and that has to be introduced in the introductory chapter of the thesis, right? Any examiner would look for the research statement, that is the thesis statement. Only after uh, knowing the research thesis statement, the examiner proceeds to read the other parts of the thesis. So that's the importance of thesis statement. So let us help our students identify the thesis statement. I don't need to elaborate it. A thesis statement should be in a single sentence. It cannot be in two or three sentences. In unavoidable circumstances, it can be up to two statements. But ideally speaking, a thesis statement should be in a single sentence. The researcher must be able to condense or sum up his purpose of research in a single statement. That is what we call the thesis statement. The thesis statement should give an idea about the entire research. Fine. Then we come to the third one. That is, we have identified the thesis. We have helped the researcher develop a kind of ability in writing. So he should have, okay, we should help the researcher overcome his initial inhibition in writing. So he must be able to write freely. So his ability to translate his ideas into words, black and white, will help him a lot. Then we have also helped him identify a thesis. So now the researcher has got a focus. Okay, what to do, how to do, where to proceed. So all these become clear once we have fixed the goal. That goal can be fixed by framing the thesis statement. So that the thesis statement should be made prominent. It should be introduced properly in the thesis, and the researcher thereafter cannot deviate from the focus. Okay, he might have read a lot about the author, but he must be prudent enough to include whatever is necessary based on the thesis statement. So his thesis statement helps him what to include or what to avoid. So please help the researcher understand the importance of thesis statement. So the thesis statement should be a mantra. Okay, it cannot be forgotten. The researcher must be able to say in which page it has been introduced in the thesis. At any point of time, he must be able to reproduce the thesis statement. This is possible only when it is methodical, when the process of research is undertaken in a methodical way. Then now half of the work is done. So having identified the thesis, now already the researcher must have collected a number of material while conducting literature review. Now it's his responsibility. It's his work to eliminate. Okay, because all those works are not required. All those works are not necessary now. So he has to be prudent enough to choose only those that are necessary, that are directly contributing to directly contributing to the thesis statement. Okay, so this is the stage when he has to once again go through the collected material. So this is I don't mean collection of material that should have already been done. Okay, while conducting literature review, now he has to select. Okay, he has to make a careful choice of the material he has already collected, and based on the thesis statement. His thesis statement helps him discriminate between those necessary for his research and those not necessary for his research. So he has to collect evidences to prove his thesis statement, to develop his thesis statement and substantiate it further. So by evidence, we can include a number of items under evidence. For example, we can say examples, facts, details, statistics, personal observation or experience, anecdotes, and expert opinions. So these can all be called evidences. Okay, so we have to collect, gather evidences to develop the thesis statement into a thesis, the thesis statement into a dissertation. I believe that I am making the point very clear. Clear. So examples. Okay, we give examples to substantiate our points of view. We use facts from various sources. Facts not necessarily from books, not necessarily from the library. Facts from other types of material like a newspaper, magazine, interviews, okay, news items. So a researcher has to be a keen observer. If he has christened yeah, workable thesis statement, he will find examples, he will find facts from all possible sources, not only from books, not only from the library, even when he is in a conversation, even when he is browsing through the net, will be able to pick up a point which would be very relevant to his thesis. So he must be guided by the thesis statement and details. We use statistics and personal observation. This is very important. Uh, uh, the thesis cannot be simply a compilation of quotes from other sources, from secondary sources. Of course, we need to rely on secondary sources or works by experts, but we can use them very prudently in order to substantiate our points. So we should have something to say on our own. When we think that we should strengthen our argument, when we think that we should substantiate our argument, we need to bring in opinions of others. So it cannot simply be a string of quotes. So many theses or like that. Okay, I don't blame it, but the researcher does not know how to do research. He thinks that a research is a collection of material, compilation of material. It is not so. Okay, collection of material is necessary not to borrow material from, not to borrow ideas from others. In order to expand our knowledge, in order to expand our thinking, we borrow material, we collect material. But we must be able to say something of our own. The researcher must contribute something of his or her own, and wherever necessary, in order to strengthen his argument. Nothing wrong in quoting others, but it should not be a string of mere quotations. So personal observations are necessary. In fact, from personal observation only, real research begins. It's We call it a flash. Okay, when the student happens to read a lot, happens to listen to a lot of lectures and other things, naturally he develops a kind of skill for analysis. Something occurs, okay, a flash occurs automatically, from which he can capture a point which he can develop into a thesis. So it's natural, but at least we should help the students train in such a way so that they will have original sparks, original flashes, which they can develop into a thesis. So anecdotes are also useful. Then uh, Now we are in the third stage, that is supporting our argument with evidences. So evidences should be carefully chosen. The researcher has to exercise maximum prudence. Okay, he has to use specific, adequate, okay, and accurate and representative evidence. So for want of time, I'm rushing through. So let us caution our researcher when he uses evidences. Okay, let him be very careful in the usage of the evidences. Let him ask these questions: is my evidence relevant? Is my evidence specific? So research is an objective writing. Research writing is to be considered very objective. It is not like creative writing. It is not. It cannot be subjective. Though we are dealing with works of art which are very subjective, creative works of art. When it comes to research, the researcher has to be objective. Okay. For example, I can say uh, ambiguity is considered a virtue in creative writing. For a creative writer, ambiguity is a virtue. Ambiguity is celebrated. Ambiguity in Wordsworth, ambiguity in T.S. Eliot is celebrated. In fact, it is ambiguity, irony. These, make the poems. These make the works of art more interesting. But a researcher who is conducting research on Wordsworth or T.S. Eliot cannot be ambiguous. He has to be free from ambiguity. His research must be free from ambiguity. So the evidence he uses must be objective. Okay, must be specific. precise, accurate. So we must teach the researcher to differentiate between creative writing and research writing. Creative writing has no limits. Okay, has no rules and regulations. It's very free. Whereas research writing, okay, it has its own limitations, in the sense it has its own restrictions. We have to make each and every point very clear, precise, and it should be free from errors. Okay, when we come across a factual error in a poem, we wink at it. We don't take it seriously. We call it poetic license. But when it comes to research, the researcher who is conducting research on creative writing cannot exercise poetic license. He has to be free from. He is responsible for each and every sentence he commits in the research. So let us make the researcher serious minded. So that is the whole point. Okay. He has to be very careful. He cannot make sweeping statement. He cannot make a broad statement. He cannot simplify something which is very important. So he must have the sense of seriousness. Research is a serious process. It's a very dignified process. So let us teach them respect the dignity involved in research. So collecting material, then organizing the evidence. That is the fourth stage I would like to indicate. So now they have eliminated the evidences. They have verified whether the material is right, appropriate, exact, precise, and quotable. Then the stage comes when organization of materials takes place. So I skip that. Let me move on to the next one. That is very important. Within a few minutes, I would like to complete writing the first draft. So research writing or thesis writing cannot be considered a single step process. It should have at least two or three drafts. You cannot arrive at the first final draft in the first instance itself. So let us encourage our students to write the first draft. In the first draft, the researcher is not conscious of the errors he is going to commit. He is not conscious of grammar. Need not be conscious of the grammar, spelling, everything, because uh, when he is writing the first draft, the aim is to converting his ideas into words. Okay, the first draft should be replete with a number of lapses, errors, factual errors, and only then we can eliminate these errors. Okay, so that's why we call it the first draft. The first draft cannot be the final draft. It should not be considered the final draft that is to be submitted. So let us encourage our students to start with the first draft. And that is, let them write whatever that comes to their mind. It need not be chronological. It need not be logical, because logic is very necessary. The argument has to be logical. It has to progress naturally from one point to another. One chapter should lead naturally to the other. So these are all logical points that have to be taken into consideration, that have to be given adequate importance while research writing. But that is not possible in the first instance itself. So if he is preoccupied with all these, maybe the flow would be affected. So let us encourage our researchers to come up with the first draft, which can be replete with errors of all sorts. So then we can go for, so I would like to make one more point here. We can ask the scholars to start with the core chapters. Usually we have core chapters, we have an introduction, we have a conclusion, in between we have core chapters. So this is how we devise a thesis. So when it comes to research writing, the advice given by experts is to take the core chapters first, to write the core chapters first. The introduction can be written later, because usually we think that the introduction is to our author. Usually, we conduct research on an author or a work of art or a particular genre. The introduction is not to an author. The introduction is not to the genre that he is being dealt with in the research. The introduction should be about the research problem that is taken up in the thesis. Okay, uh, we are all faculty. The thesis is not going to be read by ordinary people. It is not for the public. It is for academia. It is for trained, experienced readers. So they do not require any introduction for the authors dealt with in the thesis. They do not require any introduction for the research, I mean, the literary movement or the genre that is being dealt with in the thesis. But the introduction should focus on the kind of problem that is taken up. Okay, the way in which the problem is approached and how the conclusion is drawn. So these are the 3 points which the introduction should focus on: the research problem that is to be dealt with in the thesis, and the way in which it is going to be developed, and the conclusion drawn, and how the conclusion is drawn. So, to be very precise, the introduction is to the thesis, is to the dissertation. It is not to the author. Okay, when, for example, when the research is on Shakespeare, the introductory chapter should not be an introduction to Shakespeare, because okay, all of us know a lot about Shakespeare. Even otherwise, with a click, we can come to learn a lot about Shakespeare. So Shakespeare does not require any introduction. Shakespearean dramas do not require any introduction. But the introduction should focus on the kind of problem that is being dealt with, that is taken up by the researcher, and how he is dealing with it, and how he arrives at the concluding part of the thesis. So this is possible only after writing the core chapters. So if we take this introduction this way, then naturally, appropriately, it should be taken only after completing the core chapters. So let us have a blueprint, and let us encourage our researchers to start with the core chapters. After completing the core chapters, now the researcher is in a okay in a situation where he is able to know what should be incorporated in the introductory chapter, then introduction, at last conclusion. So this is the first draft, and there are a few more points which I would share. And when it comes to writing the first draft, let us encourage our students to use okay, what is called transitions. Okay, even during the pre-writing process. Okay, that is the first stage. We can encourage, or we can train our students use a number of transitions. Okay, so using transitions naturally helps the reader follow the ideas, okay, without much difficulty. So we have transitions of time, we have transitions of space, above, next to, we have transitions of okay, addition, okay, examples like that. And then one more thing, let us make it very clear that the thesis is free from okay, bias, that is gender bias. We should avoid nowadays, okay, it is keenly watched. For example, we use, I have taken a few examples. Okay, an average guy, chairman, okay, fireman, layman. Okay, man is a social animal, we say. So this is okay. In the normal circumstances, it is okay. But when it comes to research, when you say man is a social animal, you are excluding women. You are gender biased. Okay, if the reader happens to be from the other gender, there is every likelihood that she should be hurt. So the researcher should be neutral. The research language should be neutral. The language adopted in the research should be free from gender bias. It should be consciously practiced. Okay, even women tend to use only chairman. Okay, they use man or they use mankind. So we should consciously avoid such sexist language. So a number of examples are there. So any dictionary will help you. Okay, there are equivalents. Okay, non-sexist equivalents for sexist terms, and the researcher must be careful enough whether it is an article to be published in a journal or a full-length dissertation. The researcher must take care in avoiding okay, gender bias. Okay, it is not his intention to be gender biased, but his language, when it is used unconsciously, exhibits that he is gender biased. So it must be carefully avoided. Then the last two stages, which I would like to okay, tell in passing, editing and proofreading. So they are two distinct phases. They do not mean the same. Editing is different from proofreading. Editing should be taken up first. Okay, after the first draft is completed, it should be edited. Editing is not is editing does not mean checking grammatical mistakes or checking for spelling mistakes. Editing is to ensure whether the thesis is readable. Okay, the thesis is readable only when it is free from repetition. The thesis is readable when it is when the arguments are presented logically and coherently. Okay, sometimes there might be gaps in the argument. When an argument progresses, we might have missed a link. So during the process of editing, the researcher or the research supervisor should ensure whether the thesis is readable, whether the arguments are convincing, whether there is a natural flow of argument from one point to another, whether there is logical progression, whether the thesis is a united whole. The thesis is one whole. Okay, though we divide it into a number of chapters for our convenience, it is one whole. We cannot start the thesis from the middle. Okay, the introduction should naturally lead to the first chapter. The second chapter should naturally progress from the first chapter. This is possible only when there is coherence in the thesis, coherence in the argument, coherence in the way in which the ideas are presented in the thesis. So editing is to ensure whether the thesis is readable, free from logical error, free from repetition. Sometimes repetition is unavoidable, repetition is necessary when we want to insist a particular point. But if that sometimes unconsciously we are reiterating or repeating the same points. So during the process of editing, such okay, logical errors can be eliminated and avoided. Then at last comes proofreading. So this is now we are going for spell check, we are going for grammar check. Okay, sometimes we can rely on the device, but it is not always dependable. So we should depend on peers. We should depend on the research supervisors. So we should see to it that the research document is free from grammatical and grammatical, punctuational, and spelling errors. So, so we can. So if I okay recollect what I have been okay trying to say so far, we can help our researchers to approach research in a methodical way. Okay, so let them pass through each stage. Let them spend time in writing, pre-writing. Let them spend time in identifying the thesis. Let them find out the research gap. Then let them find let them arrive at the thesis statement. Then let them gather the evidence, organize the evidence. Then they will spend their time in organizing or writing the first draft of the thesis. Then editing and proofreading can be taken place. So if research is taken up methodically and systematically, to a large extent, I believe we can contribute something meaningful. Okay, instead of blaming the system, instead of blaming the entire okay process of doing research, so let us try to bring in a kind of discipline, uh, in the researchers. So let us make them understand research is a process. It is not a program. It is not meant for 3 years. It's a lifelong process. It should have adequate training. It should have adequate skills. Only then execution can take place. So let us make them understand. Let us also make them understand that research is a serious thing. So it's not okay a matter of 200 or 300 pages. It involves a number of stages. It involves a method. It involves a methodology. Okay, it should be systematic. So when we instill this kind of discipline in the researcher, I think to a large extent we can make research a meaningful contribution to the field of knowledge, okay, in which we are involved. I think I can stop here. uh, okay, if there are a few questions, I am ready to take up those questions. So thank you. I couldn't know whether you are with me or not. Okay, this is one of the disadvantages with the online platform. But anyway, hope that you are all with me, and I could make some justice to the topic I was given to. Thank you. So am I to wait, Dr. Rom? Am I to wait? I can hear nothing. Is it all right if I leave the platform? So any one of the faculty from KC College of Arts and Science can respond. So should I wait for some more time? Can I leave? I can see nobody. I can hear nobody. Okay, let me assume that the program is over for the day. So once again, thank you for the opportunity given to me. Thank you, dear participants, for being with me so patiently. Hope to meet you again somewhere sometimes. Good day. Thank you. Goodbye.